Hi, so my name is Sasha and this is Mikey. He's a really good friend of mine who's traveling the world right now, and his birthday was a while back, so I decided to surprise him by capturing a moment of his travels in a 3D scene. And at that time, he was traveling with his best friend, so I asked her for some pictures so I could use them as a reference for my concept art.
So the first sketch I made was of him standing in front of a tree where a parrot was sitting, and the feathers kind of matched his clothes that day. I don't really know if that was a coincidence or not, but I thought that looked really cool. The second concept I made was him standing in front of a torii gate in the water while it was raining, with a bunch of nature surrounding him, which I really like because he's someone who enjoys nature as well. And the third one was him sitting on a train, and I really liked the perspective and colors in that one. So with all of that in mind, I tried choosing the one that fits him the best. And drumroll please, I chose this one, and I really hope he'll like it too. With the concept done, I could have started on the project right away, but I thought I might not finish it in time, and I also really didn't want to rush it, so I decided to send a card first, and I'm really glad that I did make that decision because I honestly don't think that I would have finished before his birthday. And to tell you the teeny tiniest bit about my friend, he's traveling right now. He's in Japan. Or he was in Japan. He's somewhere else now. So that's the reason why I can't really give him anything in person from where I am, which is why I decided to make him a digital art piece. He has also gifted me art for my birthday previously, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really sweet. So I thought he might like it as well. With this art piece specifically, I tried to capture his travels and adventures in Japan right now, and I really hope he'll like it. To keep it personal as well, I made the card myself, and I was thinking about what to put on it, and I don't know, I decided on four silly looking little goldfish with party hats on. I don't know, seemingly celebrating his birthday. Don't ask me why I chose those, but they look cute, and it was kind of like they were wishing him happy birthday this year instead of me. So now that the card was sent, I was finally ready to head to Blender and start on this project. The first thing I did right after deleting the default cube is importing my art into the scene so I could always use it as a reference. Since the first thing I modeled was a torii gate, I also wanted to learn some more about them. And to summarize my research to you, I found out the torii gates were meant as an entrance to a shrine, and they symbolize a transition from normal territory to sacred territory. I'm not Japanese, but if you are Japanese, you're very welcome to educate me if I got anything wrong or if you have interesting information to share. Someone very, very small wanted to say hi to you guys. I was so invested into the project. I didn't really notice that my rat was exploring the shelf in the background. So now you get to enjoy this little rat break. So after I finished up the torii gate, I moved on to doing the branches in the front, and I've kind of stuck to my sketch because if there's already good foundation there, I don't feel the need to change anything up unless I see something wrong with it. And I thought it was fine, so I just decided to follow my reference. Then I moved on to doing the trees that are going to be in the very back of the scene, and I think I did 3 or 4 different variations of trees and bushes to scatter around on the plane. As you can see, I did use the tree gen add-on for this, which was really helpful because I could play around with the shapes and the leaves until everything felt right and cohesive to me. After I felt like they were done, I imported them into my actual project where I assembled everything and scattered them around using a particle system, which was really helpful because I also weight painted the plane they were on to kind of better adjust the placement of the trees and the bushes as well. And yes, you might have already seen the leaves on the branches in the front, but I'm going to talk about them now. So I started off by modeling a leaf and scattered it on the branches in the front using the particle system as well. And because the branches were so close to the camera, I didn't want all the leaves to look the same, so I made 4 different leaf variations. So honestly, texturing was a really big part of my project, especially for the water since I didn't use a simulation and only relied on textures and shading for that. I will link you the tutorial I mostly follow down below so you can take a look for yourself, since I won't really be explaining that much myself. Having Suzanne spinning in rounds was a great way to see how an object being in the water might impact the shader later on, and I needed that to adjust everything for the torii gate standing in the water. That's why you see Suzanne spinning in circles round and round like crazy, but it was really helpful, honestly. I did a lot of adjusting here and there to make sure that the water looked how I wanted to, and I could append it as soon as I was kind of happy with how it was looking. So this is how the finished water texture ended up looking. I did tweak some things later on, but it was finished for now, and Suzanne and I were having a great time because it was finally done and I could move on to the next thing. I didn't do anything crazy with the trees. The leaves were obviously green and the trunk was brown. Shocking, right? I tried giving them a different hue and shade of green so they were distinguishable from each other and looked good when clustered. And I was pretty happy with how they turned out. Since everything was in a different Blender file now, I put everything together and now I could start on the stone texture for the torii gate. For that, I looked at some references and I really wanted it to look stylized and stony. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'll link you the tutorial I used down below. The person explains it really well and you can follow along. And I think they do a better job than me at explaining because I really won't be explaining, as I already mentioned. So it's really worth checking them out if you want that kind of texture. I adjusted it how I wanted it to look and to make it fit my scene better. And the great thing about the stone texture as well, they do also mention it in the video, is that if you move the object, the stone texture will be different as well. So if you have rocks, for example, you can have the same texture on all of them. And because they're in a different location in the scene, they will be textured differently. After that, I started doing the rain texture, and I don't want to bore you with another time lapse of me making a shader in the node editor, so I think I won't. This is how it turned out, and I also did that using different noise textures. The only thing I did after that was adding an array modifier so that I had more rain in the scene. And you might have already noticed that the rain in my concept art is slanted, and I really like that because that's how rain usually works, I guess, because of wind, etc. But I did slant it into the other direction because I just liked it kind of better that way. During a walk I took, I noticed that when leaves were hit by the sun, they were looking like they were almost glowing, and I really wanted to implement it here as well because I thought it could fit my scene, and that's why I tried recreating it. And to achieve the look I was going for, I put a plane with noise texture on it and transparency to better control where the light was hitting the leaves and where it wasn't. So the next thing I had to do was the character. I could have started from scratch, but I didn't want to, so I reused a character that I had done for a previous project. The only issue with that was that the proportions weren't quite right, so I adjusted them until they felt good. I also had to make clothes for him, which I didn't need for the other project because I only used the base model as a silhouette. I knew I could keep the clothes pretty simple, since I didn't need a ton of mesh and geometry. It's not like the character is going to be doing crazy stunt or something. And I think the detail of your mesh is a good thing to consider before starting a project, because if you're going to notice that in the final output, then it's probably worth making, and if you're not going to notice it in the final output, then you probably don't have to bother making it at all. And since we're on the topic of more or less detail in a model, I did decide to put more detail into the hands and the fingers, especially later on, because I felt like it would look better that way. Then I started blocking out the hair by using a plane and extruding the faces along the shape of the head, just trying to make it feel cohesive with the character. Then I added a solidify modifier and modeled some spikes so they could function like the tips of the hair kinda. And yeah, well, after finishing the hair, I started doing the hair again because I thought you're not gonna see the face, and I didn't have details in the face at this point kinda yet. And that's why I decided to add details to the hair, because you're going to mostly see that, and for that I used splines. I probably added more than I needed to, but I really wanted it to look good. since you're not going to see the face, I put more emphasis on the hair. So now started my very unnecessary side quest, because you might be asking, wait, so there is detail in the face now. I thought you said you didn't want to add detail to the face. And you're absolutely right, I didn't want to do that, but I did. And in the process of doing that, I learned how to rig a mouth using a Boolean modifier, which was really cool. It was new for me. And then I played around with the shape of the eyes and wanted the character to look good, even though I knew you weren't going to see them from the front. So now that the model of the character was pretty much done, I could move on to the textures of the character. I started with the hair and built a shader to create the illusion that there are more highlights and more shadows in each individual hair strand. And I decided to do everything in grayscale first, so I could keep track of the nodes better and add the color in later. I added some gradients as well to create an illusion of light and shadow, and had a picture of my friend close by so I could match the hair color better. Because the skin of the character was just one color at this point, it looked pretty flat, and I did want to add some depth to it. So I added some redness on the hands and on the face, and I used my own hand for reference the whole time to see where natural shadows and highlights appear. I also added some fake shadows because I thought they would look good, and I treated this character more like a 2D character than a 3D character. I didn't think the clothes would need any shading, but compared to the rest of the scene, they were looking pretty flat. So I used the add-on called UQ Paint to be able to work with layers, which is really cool if you don't know about it. It's an add-on for Blender which allows you to work with layers like Photoshop or Procreate does. So you can put down the base color first, add shadows, add highlights, and you can always delete or add layers between and rearrange them however you want. Which is why I think that it's a really helpful tool, especially if you want to create something that looks illustrated. After the character was done, I took a closer look at the scene and noticed that it was still kind of missing something. So I started populating it with random assets and items that I had in there. Starting with the bushes, I put them in the foreground, and I think that tied everything together quite well. One other thing I did for this part of the project is look at references of similar scenery to see what I was missing, and I noticed that yes, rivers and waters usually have rocks, but that was really simple to add since I could reuse the texture from the torii gate. As I mentioned before, the texture changes depending on the location of the object, so every stone looked unique. I also gave the rocks a different shape so they don't all look the same, and scattered them in the front next to the character and the back to the right of the scene. Even though I said I didn't change anything about texture, there is one small thing I did add. I added a subtle hue variation to some stones because I felt like that would look more natural. I also added a few plants sticking out of the water because I noticed that on my references. I didn't really know what else I could add, so I asked my partner for advice to see what the scene was missing, and he told me that I could try adding some lily pads and flowers, so I did. I modeled the leaves of the lily pads and the petals of the lily pad flowers. I don't really know what they're called. And it turned out great. I really liked the idea, and so I put clusters of them all over the place. For the textures of them, I tried keeping it really simple because they're quite far away. So the lily pad leaf had a gradient from the outside to the inside, and the flowers from the bottom to the top. And you might be thinking that the torii gate was already done, but it wasn't. I was procrastinating doing the rope that was in the picture, and that was pretty much the last thing I needed to add for the scene to be complete. So I modeled the rope and added the tassels, and then I added paper steamers called shide. I found out that those things are traditionally placed there to mark the sacred territory as well. So now I was almost there. With everything else done, I could start rigging the character and preparing it for animation. I rigged the character using Rigify and generated the rig later on. I also weight painted it where it needed to be weight painted. I knew that the character wasn't going to be doing any crazy movements, so the animation was going to be quite simple, and I made sure not to overdo it with rigging because I only needed this rig for this project. I wanted the front row of the trees in the background to look like they were swaying in the wind, so I put a simple deform modifier on them and animated it until I was happy with what I was kind of looking at. And with all of that, I had to make sure that everything I animated looped properly. I also animated the tassels on the torii gate and the sheeted papers. In addition to that, I also animated the lily pads and flowers to kind of move with the water as well. What I also did somewhere along the way is add particles on the water plane so it looked like the rain did have some impact on the water and the character, which I thought was really cool. It didn't have anything to do with the actual rain texture, but I think it does the trick in looking like the rain does impact the water. So now the very last thing to do was compositing because I wanted to really push the colors and have more glow and even more glow because I think I added multiple glare nodes on this project and I really wanted it to look dreamy and put everything together so it complemented each other. So yeah, I'm really proud of it and let's take a look.
I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you like it as well. Let me know what you think. I learned a lot through this project, and I had 50 or 60 hours worth of Blender footage on my computer, which is roughly how long this project took. This is also my very first YouTube video, so please don't be harsh, but feel free to give me feedback. And alas, a big thank you to his best friend for helping me out with the pictures, my partner for giving me advice, and Mikey for being such an amazing friend.